G'day, everyone, and welcome to another DUC Migrating to Australia podcast. My name's Wes Zant, and today I'm joined by James Thompson. So, James, welcome, mate. Are you a Jimmy or are you a James? What do they call you, mate?
Uh, Jay or Jim, depends. Well, a lot of my friends and my wife calls me Jay, but then at work I'm Jim. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with anything, to be fair.
See, I thought that was an Aussie thing, calling people by different names. How does Jim? What's the background with that? Do you know why are James is called Jims?
I've not got a clue, to be quite honest.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh well, we'll leave that. Maybe one of the listeners can let us know.
yeah.
Because but my cousin, he's James Carl, and but I've only known him really as Jimmy, cousin Jimmy. That's how he's always been. It's a bit strange. Anyway, so James, welcome to the podcast, and cheers for making the time for chatting with us. So you're a plumber, which is good news. I'll be your assessor actually for the plumbing skills assessment. You're currently in the UK and you're going through your skills assessment. Your wife's name's Stacie, is an insurance account. What does she do for work?
So yeah, I don't really understand it that well, but it's yeah, she works in a thing called reinsurance up in London, and yeah, she sort of yeah, I don't understand it fully, but
So James or Jimmy, she's just busy, mate. She's always at work
yeah,
and works very hard. So good
no,
on you,
yeah,
Stacie, for doing that. And you've got Isla and is it Haley? Is it
Hallie.
Hallie? And how old's Isla?
Isla's 3, and
And how old's
yeah,
Hallie?
Hallie's 1.
Nice, got your hands full, mate.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Your hands full. So, all right, cool. So, I guess for this, let's call it a webinar then. For this podcast, what we're trying to do is, you've got a few questions, I guess, for me, but I'm going to fire a few back to you. So, you've started the process of getting all the documentation for the skills assessment. How are you finding that, mate?
Yeah, it's quite straightforward. It's just the waiting on stuff that's a bit frustrating. So I've been dealing with Doug quite a lot, and he's been very helpful. And being a plumber, sort of this sort of stuff isn't my sort of forte. And
Yep.
but he's been quite good in sort of guiding me through things and helping me out. But yeah, at the moment I'm just waiting on. I think it's just some stuff, some P60s from HMRC. And then I should be ready to sort of submit it all.
Yeah, perfect. So for listeners out there, as a plumber or any licensed trade, there's 3 stages to the skills assessment. The first stage is what we refer to as a documentary assessment. And that's what James is going through now, getting all the documentation. James, I actually reckon this is the hardest part of the whole skills assessment. I'll generally say that about all the skills assessment. Because you're a licensed trade, you'll have to do a practical assessment. So you go from the documentary assessment, then you'll move to a technical interview. So for most of the tradies out there, that's just part of the process. And then you go as a licensed trade, so plumber, electricians, and refrigeration mechanics. They're then advised to do a practical assessment. So your technical interview, mate, it's pretty straightforward. We give you a picture of a house, and in Australia we do water, sanitary, gas, drainage, roofing, and mechanical. And the idea is you sort of start from the roof and you sort of work your way down. So you may not have done any roof plumbing before. You might go straight into the heating, the drainage, the gas. So we sort of class heating as, I guess, your mechanical sort of side of
Yeah,
it. Would be different. But as you know, everyone's different. You might be working domestic, commercial, industrial. You might be doing it for, you might be working in all 3 sectors as well. So, yeah, there's lots of things. But the technical interview is you having a chance to explain how you'd get certain tasks done and everything like that. Probably only go for about 45 minutes to like an hour. Okay. We're not there to catch you out, mate. We're just there for giving you an opportunity to explain how you would do the tasks. And what's important for you to know, James, is the more you can provide in that technical interview, the better. Because when it comes time for your gap training, you're going to get the more units of competency that we can tick off. When you get
yeah,
your skills assessment result from us, which will be a document for immigration as well as a document called an OTSR, that's the
right.
document you use when you apply for your provisional plumbing registration. But the technical interview, pretty straightforward. You just put in as much as you can. And for your practical assessment, the lads usually get there for about 8 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
maybe a little bit earlier. Depends if I'm doing a double session or a single session of plumbers. I usually assess plumbers in a group of 4. and I get you to do so. You get you work on like a board. We sort of put everyone in like a square, and you sort of get your own board, and then we'll give you a set of drawings, and then your job is to create what we've asked you to create using. We get you to do like first fix. Do you call it a first fix or a rough-in?
I don't know what you mean
So
by
you know,
first
like
fix.
when you're
Oh,
preparing the
first
pipe.
fix. Sorry. Yeah. So we do a first fix,
Yep.
and
So I
then
get you to do a first fix. In Oz, we actually refer to that as a rough-in.
right.
So we'll get you to do a first fix. So pretty straightforward. Use a bit of 3/4, a bit of half inch, bit of copper. You know, maybe you'll run to be a hot and cold connection. So we'll get you to use your benders. Make sure you can pull a bend. Make
Yeah.
sure that you know how to select your fittings and everything like that. Put them onto what we call as a lugged elbow, which is where your water's going to come out at the end. It's all compression fittings. We cap it off. Eventually, we'll put it on test, and you'll explain how how you normally test on site and everything. And then we get you to do a bit of drainage work, which is a bit of 100 mil PVC, coming up with a couple of branch offs
Yeah.
into like sort of. I don't know, like sort of, I don't know, 40 mil, sometimes 50 mil PVC, and then coming off into a couple of traps and everything like that. So the actual assessment itself, I really feel that the hardest part is what you're going through now. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
sounds a lot more sort of straightforward than what I'm sort of building up in my head. It just sort of reminds me. We do a thing called the ACS exams for our gas, and I would just tie myself in knots every time. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, but every time I do it, it's the same nervous feeling as the first time I did it.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. Like when I look at the plumbers when we first see, they sort of seem a bit anxious, but 2 hours into it, if they're not finished, they're very close to being finished, and that's all four of them.
Yeah.
So they do get a chance to do that. But the idea is for immigration, because plumbing's class is a licensed trade in Australia. So it's actually a criminal offence for a plumber to work without a registration in Australia. So some
Right.
employers will take plumbers on and put them as trade assistants and everything like that. But 9 times out of 10, the employer may not take the risk. I guess it's a bit like over in the UK. You know how you got, are you gas safe?
Yeah, I am.
So you know how you've probably had plumbers come to you who aren't gas safe saying, hey, can you sign this off for me? I know what I'm doing. Some gas engineers will be like, yeah, no worries, mate. Fix this up and you'll be right. And others will be like, no, I don't want to risk it. It's kind of the
Yeah,
same in Oz. Yeah, it just really depends on the employer. Sometimes it depends on the states. Like if you're looking to get a job in the mines and all that, they won't tolerate really like a trade assistant. They'll want you to have your plumbing registration,
right.
and it's annoying for the plumbers, electricians, and refrigeration mechanics because for electricians it's a lot easier, James. No matter what state they move to, the skills assessment is mandatory to gain a provisional registration, and then they do what's called is the gap training after that. For the
Right.
plumbers, it depends on the state they're moving to. So, what state are you thinking of moving to, mate?
Probably WA, but listen to a few of the podcasts. South Australia sounds sort of quite good as well. So yeah, it's probably between them two.
Well, look, both of those states, the document we issue at completion our skills assessment is the OTSR. As soon as you arrive in those states, you go to the regulator, they'll issue you your provisional plumbing registration, and then you need to do what's called is the gap training to get your full Australian qualification. So the gap training's got nothing to do with visa. That's just how James gets his full Australian qualification. So you actually go to the regulator, get a provisional license, you start working with an employer. The employer ticks boxes to say that you've done certain tasks, and then you'll do. Most people are using a school that we put, like a school in Victoria, and they're taking around about 6 months, and it's all online for your gap
All right.
training. You don't have to attend anything, and then what you get at the end of it is your Cert 4 as a plumber, and then you take that back to the regulator, and then the regulator will issue you your full plumbing registration.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. And that plumbing registration means, and now what's important to know, listeners, each state and territory is different. Okay. Queensland and Victoria don't require an OTSR to give a provisional license. They do internal training. For example, if a plumber was going to Queensland, they need to do the skills assessment if they're the main applicant for a skilled visa. But when they arrive there, the QBCC will ask them to do a 4-hour open book exam, with using the Australian regs. And what we do, James, we've actually got a copy of those regs and we share them with our clients as well, because the pages are marked, which is quite helpful, and QBCC are aware of it. They're
Right.
just making sure that you know how to use your plumbing regs. So they'll ask, it's not, you've still got to show qualifications, years of experience. So all the documents that you pretty much gather in the first part of your skills assessment is what you pretty much show the regulator in Queensland and Victoria. And then they'll say that you've got the necessary skills to then sit their test. And once you sit the test, then you get your provisional license. Once you've got a provisional license, then you can do what's called is the gap training from there.
Okay.
Lots to it. I probably stole your. This podcast is about you, mate, but I thought I may as well run through that process anyway, because prior to chatting before the podcast, you sort of had a couple of questions about the gap training, and it is a pain. Over the years, I think it depends. It was only a few years ago where WA weren't even running gap training from there, so we had to get another school to start doing it, and then each state and territory is different. Some plumbers get out of the industry. It's a bit too much for them, and then other plumbers they get everything set up and they get through it and they thrive. But what's important for you to realise is once you arrive, you will only be a provisional plumbing holder, okay, with a provisional registration. Some employers will pay you normal amount. So how many years of experience do you have, James, working as a plumber?
I think it was 17 years. I started my apprenticeship back in 2007. So yeah, it's quite a long time I've been doing it.
Yeah, you've had a good crack at it. So I think the employers more look at the years of experience you've got and what you can offer.
Yeah.
Again, it just varies, listeners, at the time of the year you're coming to Oz, the state you're moving to. But there's lots of job opportunities out there for plumbers, which is good. So, but do you have any questions, mate, about the technical interview, practical assessment, or the gap training?
To be honest, I think you've probably answered everything that I've ever been wondering about it. It seems a lot. I've asked quite a few people online and on the DUC Facebook page, and they've all said it's pretty straightforward. But yeah, no one really gives you sort of the layout like you've just given me. So and it seems I think like I said before, like the ACS exams we have to do to get our gas safe here. It always feels like you're being caught out, or they're sort of word questions it feels like just to catch you out, whereas this just seems pretty normal, really.
Yeah, well, it's because you're not getting your full Australian qualification at the end of it. What you're getting is a document that is a document you need to apply for your skilled independent visa, as well as a document that, depending on the state you move to, but for you, if you're going to South Australia or WA, then that document automatically gives you your provisional plumbing registration. Yeah, it's not the full Oz qual because it's so hard because, again, we do water, sanitary, gas, drainage, roofing and mechanical. We do a 4-year apprenticeship. Not too many plumbers, in the UK, for example, they've got drainers that do the drainage and you've got roofers that do the roofing. So it's a bit different. But when you are, when you have got your registration and when you realise that I like the idea that it protects the industry. We don't really have many cowboys over here. I'm sure there is, it's not perfect, but it's definitely frowned upon. Like on the TV over here, you see ads constantly. Don't risk it. Use a licensed plumber. So
that's
just
good.
It is good. So for how you've got to when you're gas safe registered, you've got to give you a certificate of compliance.
Yeah.
In Australia, anything over it used to be this, and again, depending on the state you move to, but general rule of thumb, anything over $700 requires a certificate of compliance. No matter, so if you were, I don't know, someone wanted a tap out their back garden, and you had to run a bit of copper either underground, dig a trench, put a bit of copper on there, a bit of poly pipe, come up, and then put a tap in. If the value of the material and your time was over $700, you would have to issue a certificate of compliance, because if that ever leaked or there was damage, you're actually married to that work for 7 years.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good. That's really good. I stumbled across something last week, and it was an electrician trying to give people advice on how to fix a boiler.
There you go.
So he's done it himself, and this, that, and the other, and you got your head in your hands, thinking, "What's going on?" Like you can't be telling people that, and it's good that it seems so well regulated out there.
It is. It's annoying because it is, but when you're here and you're into it, it's safe. Like I always found it really weird that in the UK, the skill sets that lots of plumbers have. I remember working over there, and I was doing plumbing, but I ended up doing bathrooms for this bloke. Really,
Yeah.
really nice guy he was too. Actually, forgot his name, which is a bit embarrassing. He was an absolute. Worked with him for a while, and his name was Chris. That's his name. And but we used to go into people's, knock out the bathroom, like rip out the bathroom, come in, plumb up, like do the what you call as a first fix, we call roughing, settle
Yeah.
that up. But then straight away he's putting the bath in, doing all the tiles, redoing the floor, and the plumber's just doing everything. Like we were just literally doing everything from start to finish. In Australia, that really doesn't happen. Plumber comes in, disconnects the water and everything like that. Builder comes in, demolishes everything. Plumber sets the first fix up. Plasterer comes in, or the waterproofers, whatever, come in, make everything waterproof. Tiler then comes in, puts all the tiles and everything on. Shower screen people come in, put the shower screen in, and before you know it, you're back to fit off. Put all the your taps and all your accessories and all that on for the bathroom. You're just not
Yeah.
expected to do that. And then I'm seeing lots of employers now say, "Geez, these guys from the UK, they're actually quite handy because getting tilers sometimes is a bit of a mission for builders as well."
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's good, but let's move on to, I guess, your journey. So, how did it work, mate? Yourself and Stacie are having a chat. Whose idea was it to make the move?
Well, it's something that's always been on our radar, and we've denied it. It turns out just before Stacie met me, she was going to move to Perth to sort of work in sort of admin roles in the mines. She's got an auntie out there, I think, or a distant auntie, and yeah, and she didn't go because she wanted to see how it would go with me, and well, thank God she did because she I say we've got two wonderful children now, and built a nice life, and so she nearly went then, and then she also got an opportunity probably. It was before COVID, so I think it was about 2018, where she was working. They had an office in Sydney, and we nearly went then, but I think we bottled it. Really, we didn't want to leave because of family. We didn't do it in the end. But this time round, I think we're just so sick of the UK now. It's a miserable place. Everyone's miserable, and we just want a new start and a life, really.
Is it something that you like? Do you look at it in Australia and think, oh, it's the warmer weather and everything like that, or is it, I guess Stacie sort of been planting a few seeds in you from like a long time to say actually Australia could be the answer?
Well, the warmer weather is definitely an appeal, but I think it's more the opportunity you can give the kids now. And I've had it a lot with the outdoor living, and I think you get a lot more freedom, I think, as a kid. I think in the UK it just seems very prescribed, like with schools, and I'll be starting school in a couple of years, and it seems it's too focused around passing exams rather than teaching children. And I think they'll get a much better life out there, and be able to explore and more life experience rather than just sitting in a classroom and just being taught how to pass an exam.
Well, I spent a bit of time in the UK. I actually really enjoyed the UK. I did, but I was ready when I had children to move, to move back home. But one of the this time of the year we start pre-season training in the great game, the AFL. You'll have to get into that, mate. If you move into WA and South Australia, we love our Aussie rules football. But you're coaching the under-9s this year, and it's funny because even though it's under-9s, we've got quite a competitive team, which is good. I know I enjoy that part of it. But we've already got two kids now that their parents have come up and said, actually, the kids are going to miss a bit of a chunk of the year because where I live in Victoria, mate, when winter comes, it's actually cold. It does get cold in winter. But they're off for, I think one family's off for 3 months and the other family's off for pretty much the whole footy season. They just go around Australia. That's what they do. And the schools don't. I'm like, my wife being a teacher from the UK, she's like, geez, you wouldn't get that in the UK. I'm like, yeah, I know, it's crazy. Like, but that's just what lots of kids do. You are able to go off and explore, and there doesn't seem to be any ramifications. Like, it's not frowned. Maybe it's frowned upon. I'm not sure, but just so many. I've got 2 kids out of 30 kids this year coaching. 2 of them are shooting off to Oz. to travel around Australia, and they're able to
Yeah,
do it without any hiccups. I might actually ask the parents a couple of questions about that and put that on the next podcast. But yeah,
yeah.
definitely the program, the learning, and that the kids have seems to be on par. So, when did you actually start the process, mate, of getting through everything?
So I think we started. I think it's the second week of January. So we it all mainly come about this time round because we went to a wedding the day before New Year's Eve, and someone Stacie used to work with, they're moving to Perth, and I got talking to him. I thought, it sounds amazing. He's going over on a sponsorship visa, but I didn't really know enough about it. So I was like, oh, well, maybe I can go over on a sponsorship visa as well. And the way the guy was selling it to me, it was a doddle. Yeah, so I initially sort of plunked something on a Facebook page. I think it was Brits moving to Australia or something like that. And and everyone, well, quite a few people were saying, like, contact the DUC. I'll give it a crack. And then, got a phone call with Mick. He was really helpful and just said, well, what you can go on is a permanent residency. Miles more benefits to going on that. And it all started from there.
I might talk a bit about that benefit as well, because I think you've got two employer sponsored visas. I guess listeners and obviously yourself, James, as well, is there's options. There's
Yeah,
options. Some options suit other families, some options don't, depending on occupations, depending on where you want to live, depending on your finances and circumstances. But on the employer sponsored visa side, you've got two employer sponsored visas. You've got a 482 TSS visa, which is a temporary visa. And then after 2 years, if your employer nominates you for permanent residency, then you can apply, but they need to nominate you and you've got to repay your fees and all that again.
right.
But the negative side of that one, mate, it's a temporary visa. So you don't get access to like childcare support. If you want to buy a house or something, you've got to pay an extra bit of stamp duty. And then there's another visa called an ENS 186 visa, which is a permanent residency visa. You need a positive skills assessment for that and employer to sponsor you. But for licensed trades, it's not an option, because if you are a carpenter at completion of the skills assessment we deliver for you or for carpenters, they get
Yeah,
their full Australian qualification. As a licensed trade, you don't get that. So the 186 just doesn't become an option. So for you with, your young daughters, it's probably best to sort of go on the permanent residency visa. It might take longer to get, but you'll actually arrive in Australia with the document you need to apply for your provisional registration and a permanent residency visa.
yeah, absolutely.
And you can work for whoever you want to work with. Just gives you more choice, if that makes sense. You're not tied to an employer.
Yeah, that's what we found, and I didn't want to sort of be tied to an employer. And then, yeah, if it doesn't go well with them, you're pretty stuck, aren't you? So it
Yeah.
just gives so much more flexibility, and it was definitely the right choice to go down that route.
And what about your English test? Have you looked into the English test or anything yet?
Yeah, so I'm just in the process of deciding which one to go for, the PTE or the IELTS.
Yep, the IELTS. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm just deciding which one to go to. So the PTE one means I'll have to take a travel up into London, whereas the other one, there's one not too far from where I live. So that's
Yeah.
a big benefit, but I don't know which one would be best suited.
It's tough. Again, that's why we set up our private Facebook group, because everyone's different and visas are different for so many people. And there's so many factors that can deter a good. I think if you look at migration as a whole, you've got, I migrated, but was it an easy migrate or was it a hard migrate? What were the
Yeah,
challenges you had? Years ago, many, many years ago, we were actually, the Down Under Centre was actually we used to rent our space out to IELTS, and they used to come in and use our venue to deliver the assessments. And I remember, there was probably about 5, 10 people will call me in the morning, because when you do the IELTS, you normally get your result back in about 13 days
right,
afterwards, after you sit it. Anyway, a couple of them, it was their second time sitting it. And for the writing section, they all got 6.5, which you need minimum sevens to
right,
get 10 points and minimum eights to get 20 points. So I actually contacted my contact who was hiring our venue out, and I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, the British Council have advised us to assess the writing section harder. It's just, what we need to do now. We've got to be a bit more stricter on how we assess it. So a lot of other people were like, oh, let's try the PTE Pearson. And they were doing that. And I think the main difference is the IELTS, it's handwritten, you're face to face when you're doing your like you're speaking and you're listening and everything like that. Where the
Yeah.
PTE, mate, online, you get the result back pretty much the next day is on average. The
Right.
negative side from a few people that have done it, if you've got a strong accent, then because it's a computer based exam, I think it's harder to get a higher score sometimes in something that might be like the reading part
Yeah.
of it. If you have a strong accent, your accent's really not that strong compared to some of the people I've had to interview on podcasts and met over the years. But if you've got like a strong Scottish accent or like a very strong accent, then sometimes people opt for the IELTS. But I think
Right.
cost wise, mate, they're the same. Again, most people do the PTE Pearson, but it's just choice. At the bottom of your client portal, there's actually information about the English test and that as well on there, and then do ask the groups because some people learn differently. But yeah, it's another challenge you got to face.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it, to be quite honest. But yeah,
What are you worried about when it comes to the English test, mate? Are you worrying about a score? Is it just frustrating? You've got to get to the venue. What is it?
I think it's about the score, and again, it's that sort of test environment. I don't sort of feel comfortable in.
Yep.
But I think it's just a few factors like that really, and it's so much hinges on it. And if you fail it, I know obviously you can reset it again, but it's obviously more money coming out the pot, and it's just sort of part of me just wants to get it done first time, and then that's it. It's over and done with. But I've seen obviously with the PTE and the other one, you guys provide some training for it as well. So I'll probably take that up, and so
Oh
so
yeah,
hopefully,
yeah. We've got 5. She's awesome, mate. She gets
yeah,
everyone pretty good results. I think because I'll speak with lots of clients that are in Oz, that are looking to go, like or stay in Australia or whatever, and I'm always like, set yourself a challenge, like manage your own expectations. Because again, it's about having a good migration to Australia, a good, like everything's hard about migration to Australia. Nothing's easy about it. But if you can go with options that are easier and you've got the support, it makes sense. I often find that if you sort of book something in, James, and you sort of go, okay, well, today's the 18th of the 2nd, 2025. Why don't I
yeah,
book me IELTS or me, PTE, book it in for end of March, start of April, early April, that sort of time. Then you're
yeah,
giving yourself that 4 weeks, 6 weeks to get your head around everything. But you'll be going to bed knowing that you've got it coming up. So you've got plenty of time. Sometimes people just, they rush into it. They just go online, book it in 2 weeks, and then they haven't really prepared for it. Because
yeah,
if the English test, it's not teaching you how to read, write, speak, and listen again. It's just teaching you how to pass the exam, mate. Like, yeah. So if you're doing the Fife's going to yell at me when she hears this podcast, mate, if I get this bit wrong. But if you do the reading part on the PTE, you're reading out loud. So if there's a full stop at the end of a sentence, take a breath. If there's a comma, if there's an exclamation mark, understanding what those symbols mean, I guess. I don't even know if they're called symbols. Remember, I'm a plumber too, mate. But those those symbols that we see, in emails and in letters and all that sort of stuff, just use them. And the speaking part, take your time. Speak clearly. That's
yeah,
they're the things. When you're doing the writing part, again, use a full stop. Use a comma. So it's not teaching you how to read, write, speak, and listen again. It's just teaching you how to pass the exam.
yeah,
An analogy I use for the people that I'll speak with is, do you remember, James, when you had to do your driving test, you have to hold the steering wheel a certain way, look in the mirror a certain amount of times? Is that how you do it in the UK as well?
yeah. That's it. Yeah,
And your goal, you know how to drive, but your goal is to appease the assessor. You know how to
yeah,
read, write, speak, and listen. You've just got to know what that computer, if you do the PTE, wants you to do. And if you nail that part, then the difference between a score of 0 with competent English to 10 with proficient English and 20 points with superior English is massive. Because
yeah,
we've just come off doing 2 webinars, with one with Queensland government, then 2 weeks later South Australia government for our DUC clients. It was like an invite only event. I'm not sure if you would have been in. Were you invited to any of them? I'm not sure if you were too
yeah. I
early in the
was.
process.
I mean,
You were.
unfortunately, the South Australia one, I really wanted to be a part of that, but I was away last week,
Oh,
so
right.
yeah, couldn't
But
make it.
it was awesome because the way that they were explaining it is they've got limited spots to give you invites to, and they've got 50,000 people applying, and they've only got positions for 3,000. So
Right.
they want to choose, and plumbers and tradies and, I guess healthcare, the usual suspects, education, they're always seem to be getting invites, but it's a points-based visa. So the more score you get, the better chance you've got. So a higher English score does give you a bigger score, because 10 points in migration is big.
Right.
So if you do give yourself a little bit of time to prepare for it and you don't just rush into it, I think you'll surprise yourself, mate, and you'll end up going pretty well with it. And if you do need help, Fife is amazing at what she does.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's yeah, that's really helpful, really, because it's the unknown and building it up in your head. But yeah, thank you.
And so who have you told? Are you at a point where you're telling people that you're moving, or are you waiting? What are you doing with that part?
No, we've not told anyone yet. It's
Yeah, good.
yeah, it's quite a big secret. I think because the girls are so young, we're sort of a bit concerned that we'll have to tell them, but they've got no concept of time. So if we're saying we're going to move to the other side of the world, they'll think it's happening tomorrow rather than
Yep.
probably a year down the line. It's so we don't want to sort of tell everyone, and everyone's talking about it, and it confuses them, and also we're a bit anxious of how the family are going to react. So it's to be taking the grandkids away. It's so that's another concern. So it's
Well, hopefully none of them are listening to this podcast, mate, or it might
I
be
know, yeah, well,
in a bit of trouble.
yeah, I know, yeah, it's a bit of a risk, but thankfully I don't think it's on anyone's radar. So hopefully they're not looking at Australian podcasts, but.
We should have called you Peter or something like that.
Yeah, well, I was thinking
that name, mate. Get away with it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But
well,
So we're a bit concerned about that, but I know they'll come round to it, and it's just a bit nerve wracking of having that initial.
It is an anxious part of it. I think it's one of the things that can make or break families. The connection and everything. Do you feel with yourself or Stacie's family that you're going to have anyone in particular? Obviously, you don't have to mention the person if you haven't told them yet, but do you feel you're going to get any feedback from any, sort of close family members that might be, James and Stacie, we did not agree. I mean, sorry, Peter and Patricia, we didn't agree with this. Have they got anything like that? You got anyone like that?
Yeah, I think the initial reaction, I think from my parents and my wife's mum, I think will be I think they'll be upset because, especially on my side, these are the only grandkids. So yeah, I think that is going to be the initial, but I know full well, like both sets of parents over the years have said, you've got to do what you've got to do to be happy. So I know they'll come round to it.
I think interrupt you there, James. So for the listeners in there, how do you weigh it up? How do you weigh up putting the family, I guess, getting them a little bit annoyed and taking, I know it sounds horrible, but taking the girls away? How do you weigh it up and get to the point where, no, we're doing the right thing? Is there factors in that make it easier for you to make that choice?
Yeah, well, I think a big part of it, unfortunately, nearly 2 years ago, we lost Stacie's dad. And I think that was a big kick up the bum of life short, because he was quite young. And we sort of come to the realisation that we don't want to live in the same town all our life. I mean, I'm from Essex, and I have only ever lived in Essex. And I mean, we initially started exploring to other counties, but then you're still moving. You're moving further away, but for the same sort of life. So it wasn't that sort of buzz that we were sort of expecting. And then I think in Australia come on the radar, and we've got a real buzz about it. And so I think. Yeah, I think there's just the life's too short, and we've got to do the right thing, what we feel by the girls, really. Because I can only really see the UK going one way, and it's down and down and down. And I say a new opportunity. I think we're both really excited for.
Yeah, no, it sounds good, mate. It sounds good. So, In your mind, what's life going to be like for you? I don't want to say her name, but we'll say Stacie and the girls. What do you what's life going to be like for you when you get to Oz, mate? Is there things you want to change with the way you go about life, the living side, or is it just coming over? What's your version? What's it going to look like, mate?
Well, I think just having some more time outdoors is a big appeal. I like the idea of like the beaches being on your doorstep, and sort of some of what I've sort of been I've been watching YouTube videos, so many of them, and the sort of the culture seems to be that you get up early and even you might get up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, go for a walk along the beach and go do your day's work. And I don't know, just a different, it just seems like a different pace of life and a more chilled
It is.
pace of life. And it's just like a rat race here. I'm self-employed at the moment and I don't stop working. It's all, if
Are
it's
you
not
gonna?
actually on the tools, it's doing admin, I'm marketing, and it's full on all the time.
So, James, part of managing your own expectations, is that something that you look when you come to Australia and say, all right, I don't want to work for myself when I first get here. I'm going to look at try get myself employment, spend more time with the girls, make sure I am going for a walk in the morning. Like they're the things that I think when you get here, you try really embrace. Is that what you want to do? Or do you think you're inclined to sort of get back and working for yourself, but you'd be doing it in a warmer climate, or you're trying to avoid it?
I think being employed, I think initially is the route I want to go down. One, to sort of cut my teeth down there and see what it's all about. Is I think sort of going steaming in, going self-employed. I think you need a bit of experience
Mhm.
because although plumbing is plumbing, it's different in different countries.
The terminology, mate, is going to get to you big time.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
don't call
yeah.
things the same as you call them over there. You'll be. We have one or two wholesalers like Reese and TradeLink. It might be a couple more now, but it's usually Reese and TradeLink. And mate, you ring them up in the morning. Half an hour later, they're usually delivered on your site. It's very different to the
Wow,
UK.
wow,
It's
yeah,
it's good in the working. Like most of the people on the trades, if you are employed, you'll be sort of 7:30 till 3:30, 7 till 3. So you sort of
yeah.
get that afternoon. Like it's 8:15 here in mid February, and I'm in Victoria, and we've still got the sun out.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's
Nuts,
wonderful.
isn't it?
Yeah,
So if I was working, if I was half an hour away from work, finished at 3, got home at 3:30, what's that? I've had 5 hours to 5 hours before the sun goes down to sort of do things.
yeah.
There's lots to do, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I'd say it's all taking the dog for a walk somewhere, sort of a bit more picturesque, rather than just the streets and the boggy old fields around here. It just seems a lot more
What
appealing.
are the shows? Doesn't Essex have its own show? Like you've got Made in Chelsea, isn't there one like about
Yeah,
Essex?
the only way is Essex. Yeah, yeah,
That's the one.
yeah, yeah.
You
It's
haven't starred in that, mate. Not going to give the listeners a clue of who you are. You haven't been a part of that show or
nah,
anything, mate.
nah. Although one of my good mates, his cousin is one of the main stars in it, Mark Wright, and yeah. So I've I know a couple of them, but I'm not anything like that. Yeah,
Does,
it's
are they like
it's a very
are they like
dramatised.
celebrities?
I think they were in its height. I think now there's so many different ones now. It's yeah. Personally, I've never watched it. I can't bring myself to watch it, but
Is it
um,
real?
no,
Like, is it, or
no.
is it just acted and scripted?
Yeah, it's all scripted. Yeah, yeah. It's
Oh,
I think the venues are real, but it's yeah, it's very much scripted. Yeah, not
yeah.
to ruin the illusion, but yeah. It's not real life. It's definitely not real Essex. That's for sure.
Yeah, I remember I went down to a beach in Essex once, and I actually met a migration agent down there. She was lovely, and
Right.
yeah, I remember I actually found it. I actually found it kind of nice. It was quite hot, but there wasn't what do you call it, like sand. The beach was
Yeah.
kind of stony.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Again, we was away last week down on the south coast and took a walk along the beach there, and it's just big boulders and big stones, and you're like, this
Yeah, a
is
little
this
bit
is rubbish.
different. Still
Especially sort of
beautiful.
like researching like WA and stuff, and you're like, it's like chalk and cheese. It's
Yeah,
so
yeah, very
different.
different. But still,
Yeah,
still nice down there. It was still good to get. I used to call it washing London off me a little bit. Had a bit of a
yeah,
dip in the water and just get rid of all the, get rid of the London side. So, but
yeah.
James, I just want to thank you for making the time. You've only just started the process, so you've got lots ahead of you. And usually, I would say what advice do you give other people, but I might give you a bit of advice, mate, and that is to really focus on getting the documentation you can. The quicker you get the documentation done, mate, the quicker you can put in your skills assessment. Give yourself a bit of time to sit that English exam, but also book it in so you're going to get it done. Because I think once you're paid for something, you then want to get it done and just give yourself that time. And then really when it comes time for telling family and friends, you've got your reasons for it. Let them get through like that. Not every person's going to be like, oh, great news, guys, we're really happy for you. Sometimes it just takes time. And
Yeah.
I've had podcasts or I've been doing this for a while where people that haven't told people that, oh, by the way, we've got our visa to Australia, we leave in 3 weeks. And sometimes that doesn't give their loved ones enough time to process it. But at the same time, if you tell people too early and, you don't get an English test or something happens and you change your mind, you haven't got the burden of, the other scale, mate, where people are like, oh, James, we thought you'd be in Australia by now, because they don't understand how hard the journey is,
Yeah.
and then it works. So, manage your expectations. Obviously, look after Stacie and that as well. So if you can you're the main applicant, everything falls on you, the English test, the skills assessment. But there's lots of things that you can start to do to sort of prepare the move. When you put in your expression of interest, you'll be, if our visa team will look after that. You'll have a chat with one of our relocation agents.
Yeah.
They're amazing. They're so
Yeah.
good. They're previous clients of ours, and they work for us at the Down Under Centre, and they'll run through about what life's like, what school's like, what are good areas, listen to you about where you want to be, and then give you options that you may not know about or places you may not know about, that gives you a bit of time to research them. And definitely have a look at the DUC relocation hub as well, mate. There's lots of information on like schooling and anyway, just lots of information about the different states you can move to. So you got quite a bit ahead of you, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Just
then let's
one
not
step at a
forget,
time.
while all this happens, you've got a little thing called life that goes on too, haven't you? A
Yeah,
life,
absolutely.
2 baby girls and a business to run. So just, manage your own expectations. Australia is not going anywhere. Totally February, I always found, was my worst month of the year in the UK, because I think by then we're a bit over the cold. And then everyone else is like, I'm roles reverse. We've had a couple of cooler days in Melbourne, and it's actually quite nice to not be sunburned for a bit. It's like that. But mate, thank you so much for doing this podcast, mate. We really appreciate it. And I'll see you when I'm assessing you.
Perfect. Lovely. Thank you very much. Thanks for the time.
Good on you, buddy. James, thank you. And guys, that was another Migrating to Australia podcast. If you'd like to join a podcast, you've got a story that you want to tell us, reach out to the DUC. We're happy to hear, no matter what part of the process you're at. It's lots of things we can either help you or guide you, or we're also here to listen. All right, take care, everyone. Enjoy Oz.